And once again, it looks like the red light is on, indicating we're recording. So I'm assuming we're broadcasting. Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Williams, your host of the weekly Find Your New Normal broadcast. Those of you that have been following us know that this season, our third season, has been a lot of fun. We've been really talking about what are the issues that people have to deal with when they're in a state of crisis, and can you move yourself to living in the moment instead of really bouncing back and forth from the past and the future while you're struggling with what should I do next, and ask yourself a variety of questions. Every week, I'm lucky to have a wonderful co-host, a personal friend, and someone who's helped me a lot dealing with stress, because as you know, I'm a cancer survivor and went through months and months and months of searching for peace. And I was lucky enough to find my good friend, Sheila Schultz. So hi, Sheila. Say hello to everybody again.
Hi, Dave. My name is Sheila Schultz, and I have a business called A Quiet Mind. I'm primarily focused on stress management, and I help people through tough transitions in life, whether it be a health crisis or a financial crisis, relationships. I met Dave a few years ago, as he said, as he was going through a health issue. And we've been together ever since in one way or another. And I'm really excited about this season on the show as we really focus on living in the present moment and talk to various guests about how their business and what has happened in their life has created a need to look at living in the present moment.
We do like doing that, and I do welcome all of you in the audience, whether you're here live today or watching us on a replay. I see David Bennett's here. Hi, Dave. Good to see you. And we've been getting a lot of great comments on your participation a couple of weeks back. That replay is getting a lot of traction. The numbers keep going up every week that I look at it. So we are so grateful to you when you're here. And we have another super guest with us today, a person that I'm going to say is my newest friend, Andrea Jacques. I met Andrea just a couple of months ago. I stumbled across her book through one of the advisors on the Find Your New Normal board. Alan Schmosky, a good friend of mine, was helping me talk about what an authentic life is. And he had mentioned a friend of his in the healthcare field who was a Canadian, and very few Canadians get to come onto our show. We seem to be all down south, but I reached out to Andrea because I had bought her latest book, The Wabi Sabi Wisdom and Inspiration for Living an Authentic Life. And I was really inspired by it. I wrote notes, read the whole thing in a weekend. It was just one of those special books, and reached out to her and said, could you join us on our show? Because I think you've got a message that will resonate with our audience. And as a way of quick introducing her before Andrea comes on, she's an interesting person from my perspective because she has a good, strong experience for a couple of decades now in corporate arena, helping individuals find purpose in life and authenticity in the workplace, and has also spent time in Japan and has brought a set of I guess, I'm going to say philosophies that has been blended in with the Western culture of, and I guess that's why we have this wabi-sabi framework that I know we're going to draw out of her today. But she has this practical sense, years of experience. She's a great author. We're going to tell you more about her book later. It's something that you should have on your bookshelf. And she's also a coach and a trainer. So by a quick introduction, let me introduce Andrea to our audience to tell us a little bit about what you think you've been doing and what your message is for us.
Wow, that's what I think I've been doing. All right, so I'm Andrea Jacques. I'm the founder of Kiyosei Consulting, and I actually have close to 3 decades of experience. Wow. So I hope there's actually a few people out there saying, wow, You don't look old enough to have that.
I'm one.
Not so much anymore. So yeah, I mean, Dave, you did a great synopsis, I think, of what I do. Essentially, I work with individuals and organizations to help them understand what it takes to thrive. But thriving for me happens in the context of kyosei. So kyosei is a Japanese word that means synergy or symbiosis, living and working together for the common good. My definition of it, really, creating a kyosei world is about creating a world where everyone wins. And so all of the work that I do, whether I'm working with individuals, large organizations, small businesses, is all about helping them understand the mindsets, the tools, the systems, the skills, the knowledge, the attitudes that it takes to really be part of creating that world where we all can win, where it's not about trade-offs, where it's not about compromises. Now, that doesn't mean it's always sunshine and roses, but because part of it is understanding that life happens. And so, being able to thrive in good times and bad, doesn't mean it's always easy and comfortable.
And,
so, yes,
and I think your message is it's not about perfection. It's the
Absolutely.
imperfection, which was what caught me off guard, because those who've been watching me through the seasons know I'm always trying to rifle in for understanding and structure. And your book sort of caught me off guard, that there was beauty in the imperfection. And that was something that I hope that you would expand on for us today.
So how the book came about, so it's kind of a crazy story. So I've been working on books for a number of years. I think I was actually trying to count. I'm pretty sure I've got 6 books in progress, not counting Wabi Sabi Wisdom that's published. So before I even started writing Wabi Sabi Wisdom, I had these 6 books on the way. And so this January, actually, just this past year, we were out for my husband's birthday with some really close friends of ours. And my friend Lorianne was talking about a book that she's writing about her lessons in life. And she said, yeah, a bunch of people are offering to help me and to edit it for me. But I always tell them no. And I said, really? People want to, graphic design or edit your book or whatever for free. And you're saying no. And she says, well, you know what? It's my words. It's my grammar mistakes. It's how I talk. It's how I think. I don't want anybody to change it. I'm just going to put it out as I am. And, I was simultaneously kind of inspired and ashamed, because suddenly I, thought of all these 6 books that I've got. I mean, literally hundreds of thousands of words. I mean, really, they're ready to go into, like, I need to do a final draft and editing and, but for whatever reason, I kept, trying to make it perfect. And so I said to her, I said, wow, you know what? I need to be more like you. I need to just finish one of my books. And she looked at me and said, yeah, you do. And so Lorianne is one of these amazing people who just does it, right? She doesn't care what other people think. She decides what she wants. She goes for it. She just does it to her own standards, and who cares about anyone else? So I said, you know what? I bet you I could finish one of them by the end of the month. She said, all right, do it. You're on. And so that was January 5th, and January 26th, we hit publish to publish Wabi Sabi Wisdom. Now, the interesting thing about that is Wabi Sabi Wisdom was not one of the books that I had partly written. So I sent out 2 of the books that I thought were closest to being able to be finished to a couple of friends for some input, because I thought I need a little bit of input here. And I said, I need it back. This was like Sunday. I said, I need it back by Friday. And in those meantime, that 5 days, I thought, well, maybe I got to do something else. I can't just sit around. And so I suddenly thought of this idea that I'd kind of had for I've been writing for Tokyo Families magazine that's published in Tokyo for about 7 years now. And I'd always had this idea, because every article has a little bit of a Japanese theme. And I'd always thought, oh, it'd be really neat to have like a Japanese kanji and, a little chapter about that concept. So I got out all those articles, I pasted them into my writing program, and I thought, whoa, I've got 100,000 words of articles here. And I started reading them, and I thought, they're pretty good, not perfect, but good enough. And suddenly Wabi Sabi, which is a philosophy of finding the beauty in imperfection, popped into my head. And I just had this visual of exactly what the book should look like. So then I talked to my husband about it, And he said, oh yeah, I know exactly what the cover of the book should be. There's something called kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold, because Japanese tea ceremony pottery is very expensive because it's these wonderful, unique artifacts. So when it breaks, they would repair it with gold lacquer. And so he said, that's what we need to have on the cover. And so that basically is how Wabi Sabi Wisdom came to be. And so, yeah, that idea came up. It was probably January 6th or 7th. And so less than 3 weeks, basically. And it went through, even though, let me be clear here, people. I had all those articles written, but I had to go through 100,000 words, pick 40,000 words that made it into the book. And I probably edited every article like 12 times, right? I mean, I had to put aside everything else. My house didn't get cleaned. My child ate a lot of pizza. I didn't exercise. I mean, I had to make choices. My life was not perfect, but I was very focused.
And it was a great output. In fact, the image is a great symbolism for the message that we've been having in this season, because as a cancer patient, one of the things that I stumbled across a couple of years ago was that image of broken pottery, because I was concerned with all the scars. And the image was, if you can think of those scars as being filled with gold, you're even better than you were before, that you're reassembling the true beauty of who you are. And so don't worry about that image. You have a different way of looking at yourself, not as a broken, scarred individual. And I think so many people in crisis have that issue, whether it's a divorce or whether it's a disease or burning down of the house. There's a sense of loss, a loneliness, a brokenness, a suffering that you no longer can get your head wrapped around what's the next thing to do. And that's where Sheila's wisdom has come in so often, is what do you do, Sheila, when you're in that state?
Well, I love hearing this, Andrea, because, well, first of all, I started off in the corporate world, and I was really, I tend to be very organized, and I wouldn't say I was really type A, but I liked things to be just the way they should be, the way they should be. And I also work with a lot of clients just on basic stress management, people who are in the corporate world who never feel like they're disappointed that they never quite do it as well as they wanted to. It's just never quite up to their own standards. So the thing that you said that really brought it back into, I think, our theme is when you were working on the book, all of a sudden you were just focused, right? So you were in the present moment, diving into that book, not worrying about the outcome. Your focus was not the end point, which is where most people live, and the way that most of us in the corporate world are trained. It's, here's our goal, how we're going to get the steps to get there, and always keep your eye on the target. And I feel like we really lose the joy of the process when you do that. So here you just gave a beautiful example of writing the book, right? You had all these things in mind and you wanted to make it perfect. And then you threw that idea out the window and you said, you know what, I'm just going to sit here and do it the way that I should do it. And you were focused, everything else went out. That's being completely mindful. And you were, things still got done. Your children did not starve, right?
No, fine.
Things get done. But you're focused, and you end up producing something you never could have imagined if you were focused too much on the target.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That's wonderful.
And I think it also came, it happened at a time in my life where, as I said, I'd been working on, many books, and there were many reasons to not finish them. It was, and this links to David, was talking about crisis and how do we, embrace imperfection and find our calling and find our purpose in crisis. It had come to, this was at the end of a period. It was basically the book was published, the ebook was published on the 2-year anniversary of my brother passing away from cancer. And we had found out that he had cancer only a month before he died. And and so he died very suddenly. So that, really sent me for a loop. And his wife then passed away a year later, also unexpectedly. She had a seizure. And on what would have been their 20-year wedding anniversary. And in between there, so my mother had moved out from Calgary to Vancouver in the September before my brother passed away. She was planning on just living with us for a few months while she found a place and got settled. Then when we found out my brother was sick, so what was going to be a 2-month stay ended up being 9 months of my mother living with us in a 2-bedroom condo. So very close quarters. I had, a breast cancer scare in between there. I had a very badly botched biopsy that, caused a lot of issues and stuff like that. So I definitely, had come through this period where, I kind of gave myself permission to not really think about finishing any books for 2 years, but at the same time, I was feeling, this kind of crisis also was causing me to, of course, question, how much time do I have left? What am I going to do with this time that I have? What's most important? What are my priorities? And certainly during, the major grief periods, I wasn't in a position to do anything about it. But yet in a strange way, I guess because maybe partly my natural inclination, what I teach people is always to seek the purpose in everything. The ability to I learned a lot about letting go. And one of the chapters in the book is about that. A couple of them actually about death and dying and moving from crisis to calling. And so it kind of came to the point where I went, all right, am I gonna step out there, and really live my life and really be who I am here to be and do what I know I'm here to do? If I were to die, if I knew I was going to die in a few weeks or a few months, would I feel complete? And, my answer was no. And so all of that was going on for me at this time when we went out for dinner with my friend. And I was really just thinking about how am I using, all of the challenges that I have in my life, and we all have challenges, as distractions and as excuses for not stepping in to my full potential and giving my gifts.
And along
That's
with
wonderful.
that, concept, you had mentioned it was a question of recognizing being out of balance and getting aligned. And in the book that you outline that there is a process that we should be aware of when we try to recognize being out of balance and trying to become aligned again. Could you share a little bit of that? Because that really was something I was writing some notes on.
Yeah. Well, I don't necessarily love the word balance or saying that we're out of balance, because we actually are in balance. We may not like where we're balanced at, but we are in balance. We're always everything around us, our mindset and our lives and the people, our relationships are always, attempting to maintain this equilibrium, this state of balance. And so, what I like to aim for instead, because I really believe intent has such a real amazing power to create, is I like to teach people how to aim for something I call life work integrity, which is a state of alignment between who you are and what you do in all areas of your life and work. So it's that state of wholeness rather than balance. Wholeness and joy and energy and vitality and purpose and impact. That's really what life work integrity brings. And yeah, there's a process for it that I've worked with, individuals and organizations over the years. For individuals, I call it life work integrity. For businesses, it's business integrity. And so it's about, the easiest way to understand it is this: think about a bicycle. So when you're riding a bicycle, the back wheel of the bicycle is your needs, right? And for most people, you're pedaling as fast as you can to try to meet those back wheel needs, and that's what's pushing you forward. So these might be safety and comfort and love and belonging and food, clothing, shelter, but also things like money and power and status and, achievement and all of that. The front wheel of the bicycle is what I call your passions. So just as the back wheel of the bicycle drives the bike forward, the front wheel of the bicycle is required for steering it. And so your passions are really what has the power to steer your bicycle. So these are things like your values and your strengths and your purpose and your vision. I call them the 4 passions: your passion for being, your passion for doing, your passion for giving, and your passion for creating or achieving. And so that process, when you have your hands on the handlebars of the front wheel and then you're pedaling to meet your needs, you're actually, balance happens naturally. And you're automatically, you can, if you're conscious about it, you're meeting your needs, but you're gonna go further, faster, and have more fun, and avoid going around in circles when you're trying to ride that bicycle without having your hands on the handlebars.
That's great. And we've been discussing so many similar topics lately, but to say that one of the things we talk about is crisis and how that affects us and how that changes us. But it's so important for me to let people know that you don't have to have the crisis to do that.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it does, in many cases, it does drive us forward and gets us to that authentic place. We've talked about that, Dave, many times. You all of a sudden lose your concerns about the little things in life, and you're more willing to be authentic. We talked about, it's just time to strip naked, and I don't care what people say, and this is who I am,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel compelled to do this, because prior to the crisis, maybe we were trying to please people, trying to do what they thought we should do, and most of us, at least in this culture, tend to go in that direction rather than finding that purpose, finding that reason why you're here. But suddenly, when you are faced with decisions and you gave yourself that scenario, what if I only had a month to live, like your brother or your sister-in-law? What would I do? And then, sometimes it's not your crisis, but something very dear to you that pulls you in. And, just this last week, I've had some things going on in my life too. And it wasn't me, but it does make you pause
Mm-hmm.
and say, okay, let's realign and look at the situation a little bit differently than I did prior to this week.
Mm-hmm.
So,
mm-hmm. And I think sometimes crisis finds us. But I think part of my realization around the end of last year was I was really doing a lot of introspection around how am I creating crisis in my own imagination. Right?
We never do that.
Nobody on this call ever does that, I'm sure. But, I really realized that, how was I I work with my husband, by the way, he's my business partner. So you can imagine there are all these things that I can turn into crises, when you're working that closely with somebody who you're that close to, and we're wonderfully different people. And, just looking at, and the demands of being a mom of a young child and all of these things, I realized, wow, I've got all kinds of excuses for why I'm not prioritizing this. And, for me, I have clarity on that front wheel, right? And the challenge with, I think, the majority of people out there is that they don't have that framework or that formula. They don't have someone to support them through the process of discovering that front wheel, of building that front wheel. And so it becomes easy for those excuses to come in. Oh, well, I don't have time because of the kids, or I can't because my husband this, or, my parents wouldn't support it, or I don't have the money, or la, 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 right? When you get clear on what it is that you're here to do and choose what you want to do and who you want to be, that intention the strategies come after that. I always talk to people about this, they often try to figure out how to do, it's like they won't pick a vision to work towards unless they know how to get there.
Oh, yes.
Right?
I've seen those exact people.
Yeah, exactly. And so I say, no, you've got to put that aside. Let's first figure out something that you really want. And then the rest is strategy. To me, strategy is easy. It may take a while. I'm not saying you're going to get there instantly. But, first you have to decide where it is you want to go, because, it's going to be different if you're packing to go on a ski trip, right, to Europe, than if you're packing to go on a beach vacation to Mexico. So the strategies to get there are different.
And I think the thing that I run to a lot too is people don't want to make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So that stalls them. And to say, you know what, let's forget about the work part right now. Let's just play with it. Yeah. Let's play as if it's a game. We're going to test it out. And it's not for real.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't real. This is just play, even though it does end up being real, because that's where your creativity comes in, right? When your stress levels are down, you're just enjoying it. That's when all the really good stuff comes out. And you go, oh my gosh, I just came up with a fabulous idea for a business
Yeah.
that I never would have thought of if I had tried.
Right, exactly. When people are worried about picking the wrong thing and making a mistake, I always tell them to think about it like, you know, you're dropped in the desert and you're kind of don't know which direction to go. So you look at the sun or whatever, and you maybe know that there's a bit of a village or something off in that direction. So you go down in the sand dune and you kind of are heading in a general direction. You go down and up and down and up. And then suddenly you get to the top of one of those sand dunes and you see an oasis off in a certain direction. And, you know, so you start, oh, that's where I want to go. So you start heading there and you go down and up and you lose sight of the destination along the way, but you keep heading in the general direction. Then at a certain point, when you're close to that oasis, you look over to another direction and you can see, oh, okay, you know, that's 2 camels in a tent. And over here is a skyscraper. I'm going to go there, right? I don't want the 2 camels in the tent. I want the skyscraper. But you couldn't see the skyscraper unless you started heading towards your best guess. So that helps people to not be so afraid about picking the wrong thing.
But if you're on that bike and the purpose is steering you in one of those new choices that you see ahead of you, and you're pedaling as hard as you can, there seems to be a need for a third force that keeps you balanced, because if you're pedaling too hard or not hard enough and you're choosing these different directions, you could tip in one direction. And in my head, that's where that surprise crisis that's coming in, that's taking you off of that journey that you're on. What do you need in order to right the bike and realign? And you know, as you say, you don't like this concept of balance, but I'm still sensing that I'm on that vehicle that moves in a direction and I'm now toppled. How do I pick myself up and get on with my life? And I like this idea of, well, you find acceptance in the imperfection of where you are. And as you know, Sheila says, you're living in the present moment, and the fears of the past and the future and the worries all diminish as you come to accept where you're at. But how do I now get back on my bike and realign and move forward?
Oh, I have so many answers to that question.
Me too. Go ahead.
So you got to read this book and get your mind going in 1,000 directions. It's not structured. It's a terrible book. She actually tells you at the beginning, read whatever you want, wherever you want. Go all
that's
over
my
the
favorite
place.
kind of book.
Yeah.
As a coloring book. You're just moving all over the place. I said, I got to talk to this person. She's got me going here.
So how do you ride the bike? I guess, so step one is, you know, to stop and go, why did I fall off? You know, I mean, if we're using the bike metaphor, did my pant legs get caught in the chain? You know, was I wearing flip-flops instead of nice bike shoes that clip into the pedals? So when you start to get curious about how you ended up laying on the ground on the side of the road, you know, then you can start to look at, all right, well, did I even have a front wheel on my bike is the first question that I always start with asking people. You know, do I have systems? You know, do I need to upgrade some of my systems in my life, my equipment, which could be habits, right? It could be your mental systems and habits, your mindsets, or it could be just, you know, things like looking after our health in terms of, for some people, it's those baby steps of, gee, do I actually get out and get any exercise? It could be, do I have a mindfulness practice and a way of coping with stress in my life? Am I surrounded by toxic relationships and people around me that are, you know, draining my energy? Is it them really, or is it me? And it's, you know, and it's a hard journey to go through. Like, is it really me? I find I'm blessed, and maybe, I guess it's the type of people who are attracted to this work. You know, they are very accountable. They are very much, and I'm sure you find this as well, the two of you, that they're very into looking at their own accountable story, their own, you know, how they're at source, how they're at cause. for creating their life. And so that's important. People who aren't there yet probably need a different program.
I agree. And it's really because there's a whole range, right? You have people who have never even considered living this way. And then people who are somewhere along that journey. But I love this whole bike analogy because, you know, Dave will attest to my answer would be, great, I fell. How cool is that?
Exactly.
That is so cool.
About the way I reacted. What do you mean? That's what.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's only because I've fallen so many times that I know what comes after that, you know,
Right.
So I understand. And I would do the same kind of thing that curiosity, it's like, okay, so now I'm on the ground. And so what does this mean for me? And now look at all my options. Now I have lots of different options. I'm not just going on the bike toward this thing that I thought maybe I wasn't going in the right direction. Maybe this gives me pause to think, maybe I'm supposed to be going the other way. And that's why I had to fall. So I'd get up and turn around and go another way, you know? So and it's only because I've seen so much of it in my life and in so many other clients' lives that we're so afraid of that, of falling off the bike. And we instantly want to write it again. And my message is always let it fall, because it's falling for a reason, and that's okay. And you will get through it. You will get back on, and whether you'll go another direction or whether you'll change your tire or whatever it is, you'll get there. But you needed to fall off the bike if you did.
But you also have to believe that you can recover, and that for me was the stumbling block, as Alan is saying in the chat box, that we have to to get to a point where we ask that question, why did I fall? And if you don't ask that question, then there are lots of reasons why you'll continually fail, and you have to have certain skills and courage to deal with those issues that you found. Because as Andrea, you were listing off, here's all the reasons why. I'm saying, yep, I fell. That's true. That's true. That's true. I immediately went back to a sense of overwhelm. There are 20 reasons why I fell, and I don't even know how to deal with one of them. And it took me literally years till I could start to get that courage and skill set that Alan's talking about, that said, I can find comfort in the imperfection, not look for the complete answer. Just take those baby steps on one of those issues, move yourself to a state of peace, and have a clearer mind at that moment, and start to learn some new skills, such as stop worrying about why you got there and what's going to happen in the future. Just deal with the blessings and the moment of gratitude that you have today. And until I could just take that first step of finding every day a list of elements that had occurred that I was grateful for, I couldn't even begin to attack that checklist of all the reasons why I fell, or even have a clear enough mind to come up with the strategies of how to move forward. It's, rationally, it sounds very simple, but practically, as a man who struggled with this, but I can say to all those watching, you will, as Sheila says, get to the point. It's true. You will find a way out of this forest if you believe that that's the journey that you're on, and not just concentrate on the wounds that you have from falling off of that bike. You will find safety. You will find comfort. You will realign and move forward to some pretty exciting adventures.
Absolutely. The falls are there to wake us up. When my brother died, certainly there was, a period of numbness, and there was, the grief and the just, and I was simultaneously, feeling completely dead inside and numbed out, but also in a strange way, feeling more alive. When you physically hurt yourself, you're alive, right? You can feel the pain. It's, it breaks you, it wakes you up, it breaks you out of that, your life that was just going along comfy as it was. And it makes you go, okay, well, now I'm broken. Now I'm this cup, this chawan, broken in pieces. And I've got to put myself back together. And how can I put myself back together in a way that's more beautiful and that celebrates the strength that comes from this fall, and that celebrates the lessons, and that, if we go back to the bike, right? How can I, give myself, build my frame stronger? How can I make my wheels ready for off-roading? What is it that I need to have the experience that I want in life? Because when you fall, until you fall, you don't realize that you probably weren't having the experience that you wanted.
And you've got to celebrate it. As Sheila says to me many times, you have to celebrate that little success at that moment so that you can build on top of that. You can't just say, well, I did it, that's fine, and move on. You really have to stop, be in the moment, be grateful for what you're learning, grateful for the challenge that you're overcoming, and suddenly you start to get a new skill set. And the next thing that you're dealing with on your list is not as daunting. It suddenly is more manageable. You can do something more than you ever thought. As they said, if you got through the storm, you've learned a lot through that hurricane. And now the next hurricane, no big deal. I went through that. I can do that. And, sailors learn that, get me out to sea, get me through the storm, because then I'll learn everything I need to learn. And the next one is fine. But the first time you think you're going to drown, you think it's coming to an end. But every time you succeed and you congratulate yourself, you celebrate your success, your realignment moment moves a little closer, and that next list of items or next item on your list is so much more manageable to handle.
Yeah. And I have to say something here, because what's occurring to me is there's a lot of the self-help literature out there would say, oh, you get stronger, and, the power of your conscious mind, that then you're going to have this wonderful, fantastic life. And the read between the lines implication is that then, pardon my French, but bad shit isn't ever going to happen to you again. And that's just not true.
No.
Right. No. And I think it's like people want this instant change and to fix these instant results, and they want to guarantee that horrible things aren't going to happen and they're never going to have pain again. And the reality is, I think especially as we get older, more pain is coming. More people are going to die. More people I love, and possibly even myself, are going to get sick. I don't know, and you can't predict it. From my brother, 1 month to prepare to my sister-in-law, it was instant, right? No warning. We just, things like that happen. That's part of life. And so this is part of this embracing the beauty of this wonderful imperfect life that we have, and these wonderfully imperfect people that we are, who are not always going to deal with it wonderfully, but we just keep learning. And that's the fun, that's great. Right? That's the roller coaster that scares you to death. And, but you're there, you're enjoying the ride to the best of your ability.
Right. And I think that, that's really the basis for an awful lot that I do is it's really rewiring our minds. It's because we have this idea of what life should look like and feel like, and it's really delusional. It's just it's not possible. And so, of course, when something terrible happens, then our minds tell us, well, we just want to go back to our little story where everything looks pretty again and there's no pain and there's no suffering, but it never was there in the beginning. So so much of my work is helping people to be, as Dave knows, comfortable with the uncomfortable, getting to appreciate things for their imperfection, not putting a label on things so much, not looking at something and saying this is good and that's bad. I'm going to avoid this because this is the direction I want to go. But just to allow things to be as they are and appreciate them for what they are, and know that everything here is in perfect order. Like you said, we're already in balance. We feel imbalanced, but we really aren't.
Yeah.
So it's kind of getting past that belief system that we have that life should look the way that I want it to look, or else I'm going to be upset with it.
Yeah.
So,
balance doesn't
certainly have
necessarily mean
reasons
easy.
as we don't want to
Right.
fight or suffer or face pain. It's very discomforting. I don't like it. I don't want it. Okay, I gritted my teeth. I cope with it. Now go away. I never want it to be again. And that's certainly what I was taught life was all about. And now I've learned that isn't what life is about. As Dave Bennett is saying in the chat area, is that the more we grow, the more the universe throws at you. It's a universal principle that you've got to get to a point where you understand that life is a series of challenges that allow you to test your mettle, to learn new things, to get new skills, to do things that you would never do without that moment of adversity. And yes, it's not fun at the moment, and it's things that you maybe when you're going there at that moment you don't want. But as soon as you start to manage it and accept it and find where is the gift in it, you look back at all of these moments in your life that were stressful, a challenge, painful, had suffering, and suddenly you look at them totally differently. You say, man, am I a better person for having gone through all of that? And look what I'm able to do for other people that I interact with. Look what I can do with my friends and my family. Look what I can do now when the next level of challenges come to me, because I've now appreciate the skills that I have. And I actually, it sounds strange, but I'm grateful now when I wake up and through the day I say, oh, there's something I've got to deal with. I don't panic. I don't get all upset by it. I don't go into a stress anxiety state. I sort of say, what am I supposed to learn? What's the lesson in this? What am I going to gain from that? How am I going to handle it today? In this moment, what am I gaining from it? And it becomes a very stressless way of living your life. But you have to look at it differently. It's a
right. And I think that's exactly it, Dave, is looking at it differently. So when you fall off that bike and you feel like you're out of balance, I really feel like we're so focused on our lives being very myopic. So we're looking through a very small vision saying, I fell off the bike. That means it's a bad thing because I must be out of balance. But maybe if you stepped back, you're saying that you really are in balance. There's something much bigger than just you and the bike and gravity, Yeah,
well, maybe you fell off because, I have this memory when I was cycling in France of going down, the French Alps. I was riding in the French Alps and I was, speeding down this back of the mountain, at, I don't know, 70 miles an hour or something. And it was scary, but exhilarating, right? Well, I could have hit a rock. Does that mean I'm out of balance? No, it just is. It's just, that's life. And then, so, there is a point where we can overanalyze everything and say, it's about just going, all right, well, that happened. Pick yourself up.
Right.
And on go. So I think also it's important to understand, I love David's comment about the more we grow, the more the universe throws at us, because I've had tons of experience in my own life and with the people that I've worked with, that when they really decide that they're committing to find out what they're here to do, you get tested, right? There's little things that will maybe try to pull them off path and go, no, you don't really want to go there, because I think instinctively we know that as we grow, as we become a bigger container, more stuff comes. As we become stronger, the winds start blowing, and that makes us stronger and stronger still. So I think there's some fear in stepping out and playing big, because we all sort of know, we suspect there's something more, but it's fun.
But you have to define that you are going to grow. That was a concept that I didn't grasp. I existed, I coped, I dealt with life. I wanted to achieve certain goals. I went and did them. But in reality, there was no sense that I'm growing. I really didn't look at myself in that term at all. It was only when I stopped coping with my challenges and started to learn how to strive and thrive in that challenge that I started to sense that I'm different. There's something that's happened. It's like I went to the gym and did 20 repetitions for 10 weeks. I'm stronger now. Well, now I'm looking at life that, hey, life is giving me an opportunity to grow in a multitude of different directions. And I'm starting to think maybe that's a life principle. Just like I know the sun will rise and gravity will keep me on the earth, that part of the reason for my existence is to grow and to develop, to be better today than I was yesterday. And I'm finding that in so many aspects of my life, but it took a major life crisis for me to sit down and say, what the heck is going on? I get the idea I'm on a bike. I get the idea that I have needs and power and moving forward, and that I've got to have a purpose and direction to steer towards. And I may have adversity and challenges, but really, why is that all there? So that I can grow, so that I can develop, so that I can experience life to a greater degree. I mean, when I experienced life as a 4-year-old, it was totally different than I was an 18-year-old, and different in my 30s. And now I'm looking at life saying, oh my goodness, look at the way I experience life in its richness. You know, it's just amazing because I changed my mindset of what it is that I'm here to do. Once I got into the growth, it changed everything.
And Alan is asking a question about people who don't want to grow, and is that okay? And why shouldn't we just leave them alone? And I completely understand that but my overall feeling is something much bigger than us wants everything to continue to grow. It's the process of moving. You look at nature and think that the leaves fall off the trees, and then in the spring the buds grow. So growing is a natural phenomenon, and we may not want to grow, but I know personally at that point in my life when I was very, very comfortable and I was no longer growing, the universe showed me that I needed to grow. And boy, did I learn how to grow. I just, so you can say that you don't want to move forward, and you could be comfortable for quite a long time, and you have the illusion that everything is just fine and this is the way life is. But then I guarantee something very large is going to happen. And my goal is always to help people become aware of that and to start living more fully and more rich life before that happens. And then even if it does happen, they are already in the flow of things, and they say, oh yeah, this is a process, and this is part of my growth and evolution, and so much a part of something bigger than me. It's not just my little life.
Absolutely.
And we can stop, as Dave says, we can always sit down on our path. And as Alan is saying, we don't judge those other people where they are in their growth plan or their lack of desire to grow today. It may happen later in their life. I mean, it's living your life authentically as you see the world around you in a calm, stressless, peaceful way, so that you're not in a state of anxiety and stress. And you will find that if you can live in the moment, suddenly you do figure out, what should I be doing today? Maybe today is not the day to grow. Today is to get my Merlot and a nice cheese and bread. And
a great day. Are you kidding?
That's a great day.
Alan's saying I'm a huge advocate for growing, but know too many people who just don't want to grow too. And I think this goes back to really being curious about this mindset. So we like to grow. Maybe other people aren't there on their journey. Maybe they will be. But again, if we look at nature for instruction, there are some things that grow, and there are rocks. I mean, so and I love, I can't remember who said that, but I've heard this a few times, I think, from different places. What if everything and everyone in our lives was just acting the way it was for the purpose of our enlightenment? What if those people that we're surrounded by who don't want to grow are only there so that we can? Sure. Because that's what we want to be. We want to be trees, tulips. What if they're a tulip bulb and they're in hibernation right now? That's okay. What if they're bamboo? I always talk to people about slowing down to speed up. And bamboo basically can take, 4 or 5 years and you don't see anything above the surface because it's growing a really strong root system. And then all of a sudden, boom, in a few hours or a few days, it can shoot up 4 feet.
Right.
Just all at once. And so, I think impatience is a real disease, and I have it big time. Let me tell you.
But it's also, I think, not defining growth. Perhaps it's more of defining or acknowledging change, because the falling off the bike, dealing with life is going to change you. In some way, it's going to change you. And even with your analogy to a rock will change based on exposure to water, wind, and it may be a very large rock and now it's a pebble. And there's new value as it changes shape and form, because now it's able to be in the garden, or it's able to be strong enough to support a tree. And you as a human being, as you change, as you go through these life moments that we're calling an opportunity for growth, it's a way of adapting to the value that comes out of the change that you are going through. And it's up to you to decide, what are you going to do in this moment that you find yourself in? Certainly sit down and take a deep breath and be calm. But then, as we've been saying, get your paper out and start to list, well, what's happening? What should I do with this? Where's any value to me in it? How am I going to live the authentic life that I had in mind? How is it going, my new self going to interact with other people? There's so much going on for you just to sit back, take stock, and figure out in a peaceful, gentle way, what is it that I'm going to do in this moment?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that when you really hit it on the head there, Dave, when we're talking about the definition of growth, because to me, growth doesn't necessarily mean movement, doesn't mean action. Growth could mean, I'm going to give myself permission to lie on the couch today and do nothing. That's growing for you, because if you're a type A personality who's never taken a day off, you are growing by the fact that you say, you know what, I'm going to stay in my jammies and stay on the couch all day long. That is growing. That is, so it is a definition thing. There's lots of different ways to look at it, but it is, like you said, adapting to change and having a new mindset to see things in a slightly different way, and making a decision, a change in your life one way or another, whether it's becoming more relaxed or whether it's going out and doing things. Both of them are growing.
Right. Well, when it comes to growth, I think the important piece to really understand for our own growth is cultivating discernment, right? And being able to look at those around us, those people and things around us and events that are catalysts for our growth, and being able to say, is this an acorn? Is it a tulip? Is it a tulip that's a bulb? Is it a rock? Is it a small rock? Is it a big rock?
Is it a boulder?
We were out, Alan and I actually, we were out and talking at dinner. I popped by to say hi to him, and we're talking with a bunch of wonderful people who are passionate about workplace transformation. And, again, we said, well, as I said earlier, those people don't take my program. And we were all talking about how, well, we only work with the people who are ready and wanting to grow. And I think that's part of the, if we want to create a better world, if we want to transform workplaces and transform the world and transform our lives, part of that is understanding, like, let's stop wasting our energy trying to slam our bike into that boulder. Just go around. And you know what? You might think, well, but all the leaders and all the organizations, the toxic leaders and, all that kind of stuff, well, they're the boulders and they're the problem. Well, guess what? What's keeping you there? Leave. And I think that's what's happening a lot in life, right? In relationships, whether it be the relationships with the people that you're having at work or the relationships that you're having with people around you in your life. It's your choice. Right? It's your choice to stay. And that discernment is important because, I'm not suggesting by any stretch that we just give up on people, because there is a lot of growth opportunity. But I personally have been very guilty of staying in relationships too long, because I really wasn't respecting and honoring and didn't want to see what I was really dealing with, who I was really dealing with, because it was going to be painful and hard. to stop being there. You know, and just like, you know, giving people too much the benefit of the doubt. And I questioned that for many years, but I've come to realize that for me, you know, I do eventually get to a point where I go, all right, you know, I'm done with that. And I feel, you know, I always ask myself, am I finishing this as I want to start the next thing? Whatever situation it is. And by that, I mean that I think about, so have I really learned what it is that I feel I need to learn? Have I got that sense of completion? Am I finishing this relationship or experience or whatever it is in the integrity of the energy of who I want to be, that I want to bring to the next thing? Because I believe that if we have unfinished business, we just put it in our little backpack and carry it along with us, and we unpack it and we go, hey, here's my stuff. Let's play with this some more, because I'm not done with it yet.
And that's a great segue, because we're right at the top of the hour.
Yes.
So it's a perfect way of how to finish this conversation. And the way we usually do this, Andrea, is pass it back to you to say, well, what are the main takeaway points that you had in mind for all of the audience today and those that'll look at the replay? If they had a pen in their hand, what would you had hoped they grasped from what you had shared? I've got 3 pages of notes from our last conversation and another page of notes from today. So I've been getting a lot, but what is it that you had hoped that we would all pick up from your wisdom today?
You know, I guess just to appreciate that life is beautifully imperfect and that you are beautifully imperfect, and to stop wasting so much energy wishing that it could be otherwise. And also to understand that the more you invest time, I think, energy in really contemplating who you are and being curious about that front wheel of your bicycle and strengthening it and building it and, you know, holding on to the handlebars of it. And the easier it's going to be, the more fun it's going to be. In the questions that Dave sent me, you were talking about a roller coaster, and I just thought, you know, when you, like, how do you get off the roller coaster? And, you know, you get off when it's done, and then you go walk around and you rest for a bit, and then you get on another ride and you get off when it's done. And so you can, when you really know who you are, then you can make choices about which rides you want to get on and what you want to get out of them. And so it all comes down to really getting clear on, you know, why am I here? You know, the big questions in life. Why am I here? And what do I want to stand for? And cultivating what I call life work integrity and creating that alignment.
Beautiful.
Great summary. What do you think, Sheila? How was today's session?
My gosh, it keeps getting better.
I know. I love these Thursday sessions. Amazing.
I'm so encouraged, Andrea, by your work, and coming from about 20 years of corporate work before I became a coffee shop owner and then a coach. I really understand the value of this in the corporate world. So I so appreciate that people are learning from you in that venue, because I really do believe that increasing your awareness and your consciousness and being more mindful and holding on to that integrity does improve your bottom line. So not only are you happy and healthy and producing wonderful creative products and services, but guess what? You get to be successful too. So I love that. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming. It was just so great to have you here. I'm so glad I reached out and talked to you after I purchased the book. And I think that there is a link that you've set aside for our visitors, our viewers.
I sent them to you, and I'm not sure where you post them, but
in the replay. Everyone knows we're going to have the replay up in a few minutes, and it'll be on Facebook, on our Facebook channel, and I'll make sure that I've got the link there. And certainly hope that as you watch the replay that you post this and share it, like it, give us some feedback. We do look at all the comments that are there. I thank you for the comments for the last few shows. We've had some great comments. And David Bennett, if you're still there in the audience, I've got people asking, will you come back? Will you come back? So I'm sending out the warm vibes to you. Please look at your schedule so that we can have you come back and talk more about your journey. There was so much that you shared about having a near-death experience and what that did to help you find your purpose in life. And that's and he's saying, yes, I love to. Perfect. Oh, everyone heard it. He just said he will come back.
Proof. It's right there.
It's right
he wrote
there
it down.
in writing. We will get him back. This next block, as you saw, the way we're treating season 3 is we have 2 or 3, well, in fact, 3 or 4 interesting conversations and then a summary session. And we're going to do the same again. Andrea was so generous to spend some time in her busy schedule with us today and talking about some very practical tips of what you should do when you find yourself not riding that bike the way you want and having to call out for peace. I certainly called out many times. I got to get having a better life based on what I'm facing right now. Next week, Cindy Griffiths is coming on board. Just to warn you, she's a psychic reader. I've had a great discussion with her and has a tremendous insight in what you can do when you reach out for help in those moments of crisis. Here we're talking today about going inside and looking at your values and your needs and growing and personally developing. But sometimes we just want to reach out to our angels, to our guides, to our forces in another realm to give us some help in dealing with the confusion of our life. And Cindy's going to walk us through what that is in reality and what she's been doing for decades in that. And then the week after, we've got Curtis Childs from the Swedenborg Foundation coming in. And those that don't know about Swedenborg, please take a look at a couple of the videos I posted in our channel about Swedenborg, because here's a Renaissance man of the 1750s who was a mathematician, an architect, a teacher, a philosopher, and he decided to spend a number of years in the afterlife, which really got me going, where he went off and wrote about his journey in relationship to the Christian philosophies of the 1700s. And the religious dimension we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks' time. So this next block are going to stretch your mind into different directions. And then the next session, Sheila and I will be back trying to, what did we talk about? How are we going to put all this together into something that helps us live in the moment and deal with those issues that we're facing. So thank you all for watching us every week. Really enjoy your company. Hope you're always having a cup of coffee with you and pen and paper, taking your notes of this conversation of living in the moment with Sheila, Dave, and our guest of the moment. So thanks for watching. Without you, we wouldn't have a show, so we're grateful to you. Thanks for coming in. Really appreciate it. See you again next Thursday, Eastern Time. I think the clocks are changing. I'm not quite sure, but if they are, Eastern Time, 3 o'clock on Thursday. We'll be right back here. Go to findyournewnormal.com/live. Register to get your name in the list so you can be informed of what we're doing and when we're doing it. So thanks again. Really appreciate it. See you again soon. Bye for now.
Thanks, guys. Bye.